We finished Romans 14:8 last week, so now we're in Romans 14:9. And I'll start with Chris, since I slided him. We'll start with Chris. Chris, can you read the verse, the whole verse?
Yes. Okay. Eis tuto gar Christo kai apithanan ananan kai aneste kai exiesen hina kai necron kai zoton kuriase. So for ICE 2, or with a view to this, to 2, 4 is post-positive, so it will begin it for this view, Christ, and I think I wrote dead there, dead and raise up and live again, Hina, that even of the dead one, and or even of living ones, he might be Lord.
Okay. All right, I think that's good. Let's show something about Kai. Notice how many Kais we have in this verse. I'll just put the cursor on them, just click on them. That's 3, 4, 5. 5 Kais in the verse. Now, what happens when we have a bunch of Kais? Well, look on the bottom of the screen, down here, if you will, and see what we have. Whenever you have Kai over and over, the first one is usually, they translate it as both. All right? For Christ both died. See, that's how they do it. And he. Right?
I think I put also. Is that okay too?
Also is all right.
I put both on the first Kai and the last Kai, and no, the next to the last Kai. I put it twice, and the rest of them I put and.
Well, the last one has a hina clause, a purpose clause. See the hina there? Hina expresses purpose.
Well, there's one after that.
And yeah, that's what I'm saying. These last two off in a separate clause. They're a separate clause. So you could have a both here, I think that's what you did, isn't it, right there? I think that's correct. I think that was good thinking. I like that.
But you still have 3.
Yeah.
Which can't be both.
Both and in order that both the dead and the living, okay, he may be ruler over or Lord over.
That's what I had.
I could see the last one being both, but the other one's got 3, so it can't be both.
Well, the first one is both.
I got
Both
both.
and then a hina again, making a new clause.
Oh, so it's
Both
the clauses there, the both.
And, yeah.
Yeah, that's the way I have it, both and then both on after hina.
Does that make sense, everybody?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, eis tuto gar, or for unto, with a view to this. Eis is with a view to, or toward, but with a view to this. Now, tuto is what gender?
Neuter.
Neuter. So in being neuter gender, it's probably summing up what he's just said in the prior verse.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, because there's no neuter.
That's probably what he's doing.
Yeah.
And for to this end, Christ both, he what? Died and rose. The King James says revived. Now that gets into a textual problem here, because the King James has a different word here. It has zoe, zao actually, verb, and it has a preposition on the front of the word. And it's a different word. It's a heightened form of this word. But there's not hardly any manuscripts that support the King James, okay? All right, so I'm going to go with the manuscript that has Eisen, okay? And that's virtually all of them go with that. Textus Receptus goes with a different word there, okay? Now, here are the manuscripts that support the reading. What we have here on this, right here, this word here, the majority text reads the same as the other text, but we have, I believe, the chi in front of it, which is not there in some of the manuscripts, okay? But I think the better manuscripts has the chi in front of it, okay? I think that's what's left off, right? Any questions or comments there? All right. Now then, lived is aorist, you notice. Can you tell me something about the aorist? Anybody? What's the difference in aorist and present?
Aorist is a point action, or it's treated as a point, just the point in time.
It just kind of sums it all, wraps it up, ties it up in a neat bow.
Yeah, it's just a, yeah.
Yeah. And right here at the bottom, the fundamental significance of the aorist, right here, fundamental significance of the aorist is to denote action simply as occurring without reference to its progress.
Right.
So it's kind of wrapping it, putting everything in a bow, in a little bundle, and tying it up in a bow. So what we have here is the aorist probably just sums everything up. And so we don't need to necessarily look for it to be past tense. It could be summing up his whole life. If it's aorist, if he lived, it might be talking about his life prior to his crucifixion and after as well, both, combination of both of them. Okay.
Just something took place.
We get in, yes. We get into thinking in terms of time with regard to English. English speakers speak chronologically. We put things in chronological order most of the time. And Greek speakers didn't. They put them in a logical order. Okay? And so the fact that lived is after rose, the resurrection, see, doesn't necessarily mean that he's talking about his life after he was resurrected. It could be the sum of his whole life, the entirety, both before and after. Because the aorist kind of wraps it up in a bow. So I would argue that it could be referring to both his life before and after his crucifixion, after his resurrection.
Question. Generally, though, the indicative indicates past time, right? Mostly.
Yes, with the aorist. Yeah.
The context sometimes says no, but usually it's a completed action in past time.
But the aorist still wraps everything up in a bow. Right. And if it took part of the time is past and part of is present, see, it could still be aorist because it's wrapping everything up. So aorist, even though it normally in indicative mood is past, it can lap over into the present. Okay. Yeah. If we got some action in the past, that would indicate the life before and the life after as well. Just a sequence.
Right. Context.
Summing it all up.
Context can change that. Yeah. I mean, context may be different, but generally speaking, indicative is completed action in past time.
Right. Yes.
That was my understanding.
Yes. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. Both of the dead and the living. So what? The dead and the living. Who are the dead and the living? Got a question. Are these physically dead and physically living? Or are they spiritually dead and spiritually living? No, we would probably agree it'd have to be one of those two, wouldn't we?
Yeah, he wouldn't rule over the physically dead.
The physically dead wouldn't be his Lord because they couldn't obey him. Once you die, your fate's sealed. That's it.
True.
Yeah. And I think it's spiritually dead. He wants to be Lord of the spiritually dead, and he becomes their Lord when they obey him. And he wants to continue to be Lord of those who are spiritually alive. So I think it's spiritually dead and spiritually alive. He wants to be Lord of both of them.
Mhm.
Which in effect says everybody that's living, he wants to be their Lord.
Mhm.
And once you've died in Tartarus, you have no hope after that point. All hope is gone.
I took it physically, but the whole subject here is two people who are not getting along and they're rejecting each other, or two groups, if you will. And now, and the whole point of this was that no, they're both mine.
Yeah.
You know, and so.
But it would still fit. What you're saying would still fit if he wants to be the Lord of both living and dead spiritually. That'd be everybody that's alive. Again, in this context, as Jerry pointed out, he is talking about two groups of people here, as we've already been discussing. Okay, those who would eat, and those who wouldn't eat. Okay, and those who would drink, and those who wouldn't drink, and those
And it
who
was
would
the
observe
rejection
days
of
and
each other
wouldn't
that-
observe days.
It was a rejection of each other that was the real issue, and that's what they were judging and rejecting something that God hadn't rejected.
Yeah.
Which I guess puts them in that spiritually dangerous, if not dead.
Yes, it could. We need to be careful. We need to grow and learn how to treat people. Okay. All right. Now then, I'm gonna leave. I usually go with Jim first, so I'm gonna come down here with Tony. We'll go with you, and then we'll go to Jerry, and then we'll go back to Jim. Okay. Can you read down to the semicolon, if you will? There's a break.
Okay.
At the end of that line, in verse 10.
Sude, pi, Crenice, ton, adelaphone, su, he kai, su, tai, ekuthenes, ton, adelaphone, su.
Okay? So sude t crenes is what?
Sude t Crenice is, but why do you judge us
Why do you judge?
or judge?
Why do you judge? Okay. Now, notice the Sue. What do we say about Sue? When we have Sue in here, we have Sue right here. Greek verbs have their what at the end of the verb, in the end of the verb. What is at the end of all Greek verbs? A what? What part of speech is at the end of all verbs? Help me out here.
Part of speech at the end of.
At the end of all Greek verbs.
It's-
There's a part of speech. There's another part of speech other than a verb at the end of the verb. Starts with a P and an R.
Pronoun.
It's a pronoun. All of them have a pronoun in them. O, ace, a, omenetiusi. All those are all pronouns. Okay? So right here, it already has a pronoun. Right? So when you put another pronoun on it, that becomes what? Yeah. Becomes
Okay.
emphatic. That's what he tells you right on the screen right here. The nominatives, if you have them, and of course that would be the subject of those finite verbs. And so you've got you and singular and plural su and humes, singular and plural nominative. If you have those there, you already have another pronoun at the end of the verb. All verbs have them. So you have a double pronoun, you. So it's emphatic. Does that make sense? Everyone understand that? Does that make sense to everybody?
But why do you even use?
Why do even you, see, even you, judge? Who are you judging?
Judging the book?
The brother of you or your brother. Now, brother is in what, adelphon is in what case?
Yeah,
Tone.
yeah.
Notice the new on it, tone.
Uh-huh.
It's
It's the accusative case.
the accusative case.
Mhm.
So that tells me that crenace is a finite verb. It takes a direct object
Mhm.
in the accusative case. So it's a finite verb. All right?
Mhm.
So why do you judge? See, you're sitting there, well, who are you going to judge? You're sitting there waiting for him to finish the sentence. He doesn't finish it, see. So it needs that direct object, a tone and alphon, to finish it out. Okay? All right. Agar su T exuthenes. Exuthenes. Okay, I put the emphasis on the wrong one. That's exuthenes. All right, so what do you have there?
I put, nor also, you also, why do you despise?
Okay, so why do you also,
Despise.
okay? See, or why do you also despise?
Yeah,
A
or.
is or.
Right, or.
Or why do you also despise? All right, who do you despise?
Your brother.
The brother of you again, see?
Brother.
Again, accused the case. So, exuthenes is a finite verb. It takes a direct object. Okay, so you can tell that as a direct object there, it's finite verb.
So it's a rhetorical question, or it's a question.
Yeah.
And so it's asking, why, basically, it's saying, who are you to judge?
Yeah. So this right here, this takes a postcedent. Okay, this verb does. Comes over here. Okay. So, whereas we would get an antecedent for other verb, other pronouns, or this pronoun does. All right,
You got
let's see.
there.
Wait, I'm sorry.
You got dad there, which is.
Yeah.
Up there at first.
Right. Okay, let's do the rest of the verse here, Jerry.
Okay.
I gave you a short one there.
Thank you. Pompes, gar, paras, so metha, to, Mati, tu, Christu.
Very good. Pontes gar is what?
We all,
For all, okay.
oh yeah, for we all, or for all.
So we all what?
Shall observe or
Let me
stand
go down to
before.
the next page, okay? All right. We shall all do what?
I put shall observe, but I think mostly it's translated shall stand before.
It's stand beside, more literally,
Yeah.
but they haven't stand before, that's okay. But it's stand beside. All right. Literally, para is beside, and histemi, parahistemi, stand beside. And this is future middle. Huh. So, is somebody going to be able to take your place? No, you have to give account of yourself to God, see. I don't give an account of my son, my wife, my children, unless I influence them for evil,
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to give account of that, or not influencing them like I should have for good. But they're responsible for their own sins. I'm responsible for mine. We shall all stand before for ourselves, see middle voice. The what?
The place of judgment or throne.
Place or throne of judgment, seat of a judge. Of who? Who's the judge?
Of the Christ.
Okay, now remember, Jesus said on one occasion, I came out of this world to judge, but to save. So how can you be a judge?
Well, it's not in this world.
Not in this world.
Okay. In his first coming, he was not coming as a judge, but he will come in the second coming as a judge. I think that's pretty simple. They want to see that. I heard some people try to make a big deal out of that. I said, well, it's just time, okay? It's like in Genesis, God looked at the end of creation in Genesis 1 and said, it is good. After he finally created man and woman, he said, it's very good. Then back in Genesis 6, which is several hundreds of years later, about 1,500 years later, approximately, he said it is not good, okay? Well, it's a time lapse, okay? Things have changed, okay? There's a time lapse, okay? Any questions? I will stand before the judgment seat of Christ. Both the one who is judged in verses 3 and 4, the stronger brother who ate, and the one judging the weaker brother who did not eat will be judged by Jesus, their Lord. Now, his standard of judgment is going to be what? John 12:48. The word that I speak unto you, the same shall what?
Judge you.
Judge you in the last day. Is that right?
Mhm.
Okay. So right there, that's our standard. To be judged by the word of God. And there's nothing wrong with making a decision about sinful actions of a brother. If, number one, we have evidence that he's truly guilty of the sin, and number two, that the action is truly sinful. And we have to go to the scriptures for that. There have to be two things there. And then the third thing is we need to approach him in the right way, right manner.
Galatians 6.
Yeah, Galatians 6, 1 and 2. 2 Timothy 2, 24 through 26 as well. Okay? Any questions there? All right. We must have evidence of his guilt. 1 Corinthians 6. He never accused anybody without evidence. All right? Of course, we have some people that think all judging is wrong, and some think that seem to think almost no judging is wrong. They don't really understand that. Romans 14 is dealing with neutral matters, things that within themselves, all by themselves, wouldn't be right or wrong, like eating meats or eating certain foods, right? So the eating of meats was a neutral matter. It's lawful to eat them, and it's lawful not to eat them. You didn't sin either way. But you start accusing your brother of falsely accusing him of sin or looking down your nose at him, you've sinned then. You've done wrong. Okay? Shouldn't have strife over some of these matters.
Well, even if he has sinned and you look down your nose.
Yeah, you shouldn't look down your nose at him if he has sinned. You ought to pity him and feel empathy for him. So, okay? All right. Paul did not use a Greek word here, adiaphoria, which is not in the New Testament. But it's a Greek word meaning want of difference or of agreement, indifference or philosophical indifference. He didn't use that word. But I think the thought is pretty close to it. Okay. All right. The thought is. Jerry Gore is the one that gave me this lexicon. You bought it for a quarter, didn't you? This big thick lexicon, that old one, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Now, what did you pay for it? You remember?
It was something like that.
At some garage sale, picked it up. So he said, Marion can use it. So I got it up on my shelf and I pulled it out of what's on. That's right out of that lexicon. It's 1854 is when it was printed. That makes it 150 years old or so. All right, let's look at the square of opposition and explain this just a bit here, if we might. Right here, we have four options on any proposition. A proposition is a statement that can be either true or false. And it is by nature of its nature either true or false. Okay? This is either a mask or it is not a mask. Okay? It's got to be one or the other. It is or it is not. This is either a computer mouse or it is not a computer mouse. That's a true statement. So, when we say here, the type A proposition, all S or P, we would say all judging is sinful. Now, okay, that's a claim that some people make by misinterpreting Matthew 7, 1 and 2. But John 7:24, Jesus said, judge not according to appearance, but judge what? Righteous judgment. See? So he actually commanded to judge, and that's a commandment, to judge righteous judgment. So you see, some judging is lawful because the Lord commanded it. So some judging is not sinful. Now, this proposition contradicts this up here. If this one down here is true, which some judging is not sinful, as we saw, Jesus said, in John 7:24, and if some is not sinful, then all is sinful would be wrong. It could be false. So this claim that all is sinful has been contradicted by that. So now we've ruled that out, okay? Now then, we got another question. Is no judging sinful? That would be the E-type proposition. Well, we could go to Matthew 7, 1 and 2, some people's favorite verse, and it does say some judging is wrong, see? So some judging is sinful. So that would contradict no judging is sinful. See? So we would say we have gotten rid of both of those propositions. They can both be false, but they can't both be true. In this case, they're both false. These are subcontraries. They can both be true, but not both false. Okay? And in this case, they're both true. So our conclusion is some judging is sinful and some is not sinful. Now we've got to study the Bible and see what's sinful, what's not sinful. Does that make sense? That's how we look at the proposition. Some is, some is not. We're not going to go into that in more detail. But I'm just saying, that's how we look at things. And we can say, all right, now I can see some are and some are not. Now then I've got to study my Bible, figure out what is not. Any question? Righteous judgment is certainly not sinful. Jesus commanded. So if a judging is not righteous, obviously it is forbidden. Does that make sense? From John 7:24. Okay. Any question, anybody? All right. Where did we finish this verse? Why do you judge your brother?
Yes, we finished him.
Let me get back there. Why do you judge your brother, or why do you even set it not your brother? For we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. Now let me see here. There's another point I wanted to make here. It's on these verbs, I think it was. We have, this is first person plural, and the OA say this is third person singular. So this is singular and this is plural down here, see. So we may be talking to two different groups of people. Does that make sense?
Okay, say it again. I'm sorry.
This is first, OA say this is third person singular. This is omethar, this is first person plural. Okay. So what I'm saying is, we got to watch our pronouns, and remember your verbs have pronouns with them. Sometimes he's changed the groups, right? We've got two groups he's talking about here. You got to kind of watch the pronouns if you're not careful. Okay. Be careful of watching those pronouns.
Is he making since the despising, and that's what you're looking at, right? Despising is singular. I think so. Is he saying that you individually despise? He's talking about the individual. He's wanting to take everyone take individual account of themselves in that regard. Well, the ones that we're setting it not is plural. You plural who said it not. Right. And your brother singular. And the ones that judging your brother were judging individuals. The judging there is singular. So it appears there may have been one or two people involved in this, just a few.
Well, the second one, it looks like he just opened it up to the human race, you know, we're all are going to stand, you know.
Yeah, but
just those people, but everyone.
But generically, if all stand, then you individuals will stand too.
Yeah. So
whatever applies to all the individuals. I think he's looking at the two groups that we've seen here. One judging and one setting it not, as we've already seen. Right. And of course, judging the judging is singular. There may be just one person causing trouble here. Or it could be that those who judge have a tendency to leave themselves out on that deal. Yeah. Well, yeah. You know, I could be like the old Pharisee. You know, he prayed, Lord, I'm thankful that I'm not like this other man over here. You know? Right. So I'm not like everybody else. Yeah. That may be a good point too. That could be. That could be. I hadn't even thought of that. Okay. Any questions or comments? All right. Verse 11. I think Jerry read last. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So we're Jim. Can you read verse 11? And I'm going to give you the whole verse now. See, I just loaded you down.
Okay. Gegraptigar, Zoego, Lege Curios, Hotiemoi, Kamse, Pan Lo Gonu, Kaipasa, Glosa, Echo Mologe Setai To Theo.
Okay? Okay.
And I translated it, for it is written, I live, the Lord says, to me every knee will bow and every tongue will confess to God.
Okay? All right, so it is written is what tense?
The it is written is the perfect tense. It
Yes.
has the reduplication.
Right. So it's, what does perfect mean compared to, say, aorist or even imperfect or present?
It's something that's been completed, but it has an ongoing effect.
Right. So it's written and it's still written, or it still has effect. See? Does that make sense to everybody?
Mhm.
And so that's usually whenever it says it is written in the Bible, most of the time, in my experience, it's been the perfect tense.
Mhm.
It has been written and it's still, what God wrote in the past is still true today, okay?
Mhm.
All right? Does that make sense? Now, this verse is a quote of Isaiah 45:23. Okay, did everyone notice that? Okay. So that passage is also quoted in Philippians 2:10. Philippians 2:10. Okay. Same verse. And in verse 10 of Philippians 2, it's referring to submission in this life. What do you think it's referring to, submission? When submission here in verse 11 here, James, what do you think? Is it in this life or the life to come, or judgment?
I would see it more toward judgment.
He just talked about the judgment, hasn't he?
Yes.
So the knee shall bow. See, that's future tense. See? So now, as I live, saith the Lord, and to me every knee shall bow, and that's future tense. It's future indicative active. The bowing of the knee is an autonomy of the adjunct for submission. I think it's on the judgment day. Well, now wait a second. If the same verse is quoted in Philippians and it's applied to bowing and submitting and confessing in this life, and then that same verse is applied to confession in the judgment day, it must be what? B-O what? T what? Both. It's both. Does that make sense? In other words, he intends that we bow in submission to him both in this life and in the judgment. Okay? I think even the unbelievers will bow before him on the judgment day. Okay? That's what I think. That's the way I interpret it.
There won't be unbelievers anymore.
Yeah. Now, after 5 seconds after death, there are no more atheists. They're not atheists anymore. It's too late, but they're not atheists. Okay. So I really take this to be, it's by putting it together with Philippians and this passage, the intent is that the bowing should be in this life and in the life to come, forever and ever. Okay. Any comments?
I would, on the idea of confessing there, is it okay if I address that?
No, but go ahead and address it.
All right. The word is a word that means both confess or profess. And I thought about that for a while and decided on confess. Profess seems to be more of an active thing I do, where confess is it's something I do whether I want to or not.
But notice, what is the voice of this confess?
Middle.
It's middle.
I think the profess is probably better.
Really?
But the
Okay.
translators have all gone with confess. They're against Marion, okay?
And me, because I've always put profess in there, but I wasn't going to say that because I wasn't sure until somebody else.
I like profess, but confess is good. There's nothing wrong with it. Here's the thing about this. This word for confess, ex homo logeo, right here, that word there, let me do it again. That word there is quoted in more than one passage. Now, what we do is, let's come down here and look at it. Paul quotes Psalm 18:49 and Romans 15:9, next chapter. And he has this Greek word here, ex homo logeo, again from Psalm 18:49. All right? And in Psalm, he has the Hebrew word yada. And then in Romans 14:11 and 15:9, we have the words give praise or confess, American Standard King James. And so what we have here, confessing and giving thanks, are equated. Now, when we take this word and look at it as it's quoted other places, now this word is found in these other places. This is from quotes. One of these is a quote by Jesus of another passage where it has another Hebrew word. And he puts ex homo logeo for another Hebrew word. And so what we have is that word carries the idea of joyfully confessing something. And it's really an oath. One of the words is to make a vow or an oath. Right? And we're not going to spend time on it, go back and look at it, but you can look at that and study it out for yourself, okay?
I don't think the bad people are going to be joyous, though.
But what we have here is, I really believe there's more to confession than just most people think. It's not just some words said. I think it's a vow, an oath that we make when we make Jesus the Christ. We confess him as the Christ. He is prophet, priest, and king, the Messiah, the anointed one. Prophet, we believe everything he says. Priest, we go to him for a remission. And king, we'll do what he says.
When our denominational friends say, accept Jesus into your heart, that's basically what they're talking about. It's not at that point that we're saved.
Yeah.
But that is truly what it's meaning.
Yeah.
I'm accepting you, Jesus, as my Lord and Savior.
Yeah. And so they're not too far wrong on that. They just got salvation in the wrong place.
Got it in the wrong place.
Yeah.
They're mixed up on the what and when.
Yeah, what and when, okay. All right. Now, I might have a note for myself to study some more, and I want to do this right here underneath it, and I'll highlight it. This is a note to me, and I want to, this ex homo logeo sometimes take a dative object, sometimes an accusative object. Generally, they carry different meanings when they do that. And I want to study those passages out more thoroughly. And I probably will do that before this course is over. If I can find the time, I'll sit down. But you got to look at them in context and study them. And, it takes hours and study on it. So I just haven't done it. But I think there's a difference in them. One sometimes takes dative, sometimes takes an accusative object. And so that's a little different, okay? A dative object is not a transitive verb, only accusative is. So it becomes intransitive. So that's kind of a subtle hint as to the difference. All right? I think Gar links it to the previous verse, both the weak and the strong must bow before God or submit to him. I translate it, for it is written, as I live, says the Lord, that to me every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess to God. Now I put, to make a vow with joy on the word confess. Okay. Are there questions? Now, again, as I have these passages in parallel, the Romans, but I also put Philippians down here as well, so you can have it as well. Okay. So might help your study. I don't know if it will, but hopefully it'll give you some help. All right, who read last? James, did you read last?
Yes, sir.
I think Chris is next. I believe that's correct. Is that right, Chris? Am I out of order?
Sounds good to me. I'm not tracking it. But, all right. Romans 14:12.
Yeah.
Ara un eketsatos amon peri heto lagon dose to theo.
Okay.
So,
All right. Go ahead.
So for ara and un, I put therefore and put them together there. And eketos is each one, and then amon of us, and peri, I put that as concerning, but I put concerning himself, account or word he will give to the God.
Okay. The word logon, account, that's a good rendering, but it's collected thoughts. So it has become a prefix, a suffix in English, ology. Biology is all of the thoughts and the knowledge we have about life. Geology is all the thoughts we have about the earth and so forth. So the ology comes from this word, a suffix in English. So this is, he's going to give account of all that he's done, see. Okay. That makes sense? Now I got another question here now. Ara together, according to Bauer and Gingrich, they say ara is the inference and is the transition. So it transitions to a new thought. Okay, that's what he claims. So each one, we don't go to heaven as a group. We go to heaven as individuals, right? And there'll be men who go to heaven, their wives don't. There'll be wives who go to heaven, their husbands won't. There'll be fathers who don't go to heaven, their children will, and so forth. Children who won't go to heaven, their father will. So we don't go as a group. We don't even go as a congregation. Although I believe a congregation can be guilty of collective sin, but we each individually will give account of ourselves as individuals. Okay. Now we can be guilty of collective sin. A bunch of people got together and killed Jesus, didn't they? We're all guilty of that same sin.
Well, Church of Corinth was messed up with fornication.
Yeah. 1 Corinthians 5, weren't they?
Right.
Tolerating it and even kind of almost like glorying in it. So, shall give account. Collective thoughts. Now look, if you will, on logos up here. It's a collection. See Lego, and if you get Lego, that's the collected things, and that's all your collected thoughts. You're going to speak. Let me collect my thoughts and tell you what I think. See, that's kind of what we're saying we would use. So he's given an account of himself, a reflective pronoun, and it's to God. Okay. Now here we always think of God as the Father, but God may be Jesus the Son, or it may be the whole Godhead. Okay. All right. Any comments? Again, I point out here we're judged as individuals, not as a group. Okay. So in each one of us gives account of himself to God. All right. Verse 13. All right. We're going to go another about 15 more minutes or so. If we can, let's get through verse 13 and maybe even 14. Okay. Okay. Let's see. This is a lengthy reading, but I'm going to come down to Tony. Would you read down to the cursor, and then Jerry, could you take the last part when we get to it? Okay.
Mekatai, Alalus, Krienomen, Ala, Tuto, Tu, Tau, Tu, To, Create, Malon.
Okay. So Mekate is what?
Mekate, let me find it on here. It's and I know. I know, I am persuaded, rather.
No, that's
And,
14.
Oh, okay, we're
Back
in,
up to 13.
let me find myself here. Okay. Any more, that's what I have, any more, therefore, any more, one another. Therefore, not
do what?
not one another judge.
Okay, let us not judge one another, see. Now let me point out something. Make it T has may in it. May does not go with the indicative mood. Okay.
Hmm.
So it goes with the other moods. So we come down to prenomen. Notice that's an omega, not an omicron. So that's subjunctive mood. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Let us not therefore judge. Now in this case, the subjunctive mood becomes an exhortation, and it's used as exhortation many times. So let us not judge. It's exhorting them not to judge. Now, when an apostle exhorts you to do something, unless it's in the area of judgment, it has the effect of being a commandment, in my judgment. I'm convinced. But an apostle exhorted you to do something. Now, if it was in the area of judgment, then it would be strictly an exhortation, okay?
Well, wouldn't the not emphasize that point?
Yeah, it is not no longer therefore judge exhorts them though, not imperative mood. It's indicative. It's a subjunctive mood.
Yeah.
Which can function like a commandment. I think it is here. Okay.
Okay.
Right. But I pointed out it is subjunctive mood. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now let's not judge who.
One another.
I'll lay loose.
One another. Yeah.
I'll lay loose. Okay, and I'll lay loose is from what root word? Olos, which means what? Another of what?
Another of a different kind.
No, heteros is a different.
Oh yeah, one of them.
Olos.
Another of the same kind.
Think of alloys. Alloys, you put
Yeah.
things together like metals together. Okay? Right. All right. So judge one another. You're judging your fellow Christians, your fellow disciples. Okay, and cut that out. Quit it.
And you're making the rules of the judgment.
Yep,
Which is
you're
what they were
making
really
rules.
doing wrong.
Okay. We've already dealt with this question of what some type of judging is forbidden and some's not. We won't go back through that again, okay? All right. All right. It's evident that the one judging is being used in two different ways in this verse. Okay, let's look at the verse again and see what I'm talking about. All right. Let us not judge one another, but judge. Say, you're not to judge, but you're to judge. So they have to be used in two different ways. Does that make sense? Or in different contexts? Okay, that would be a contradiction otherwise. Okay. But that's Allah. Now then, it's Jerry's turn now to go from here. No, it wasn't. We're Allah. We got you're still on yours. Huh?
Yeah.
Allah, tuto, prenate, Allah. All right. So Allah is what now?
Allah is bud. I've got bud.
And it always takes something that's of a different set. Okay.
Right.
Right.
I put rather, but it's kind of.
Well, I have bud.
Rather, I think it's okay because it's in effect the same thing as but.
I've got, but this judge you judge rather. That's what I have. But this you judge rather. No one. That's what I have.
Malone is where you get the rather.
Right. Malone.
Right. And so, to a greater degree, actually, rather. Okay. All right.
Yeah. But this judge you rather.
that no man, now we come back to this. So we come to right here, and then Jerry can take that to the end of the verse, okay? From the cursor to the end.
Okay. To, may, tithat, no. I gotta get where I can actually get my eye to focus on it. Proskoma, to, adelpho. I don't know if this one's rough or smooth.
Smooth breathing.
Smooth, A. Scandalone.
See, R, it's A, it's R. Okay.
Yeah.
Instead of,
Well, I couldn't,
okay.
even in text, I couldn't make it out even with a magnifying glass, which way that was facing. Not to put or place, I think not to place, stumbling block, to the brother, or a cause of stumbling.
Okay. And that word scandal, our word scandal comes from it, see? Scandalous things, see? So we've got a problem here, I think, in this context, by looking down their nose and kind of looking down upon someone, they might be causing them to stumble. They might be causing them to stumble by doing something that the other brother thought was wrong, and then he goes ahead and does it, violates his conscience. So we cause him to stumble, or we place a stumbling block in front of him. And if I love that brother, I'll say, well, you know, old Marion's freedom is not that important. What's important is my brother going to heaven. All right? Any comments?
I had Jewish friends that I went to school with, and I worked with some couple of them too. And we went out to eat lunch a few times, and I would never order a ham sandwich because why insult them before you even get a chance to talk to them? You know, it would be dumb.
Well, I think that's 1 Corinthians 9.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think that was wise. I think that was good. Right? Okay. Or a falling. That's like a trap, or a trap stick, snare. Okay. All right. Judging one another is putting a different set than placing a stumbling block in front of it. So these are different things, and they're both wrong, but they're in different categories. Okay. I think our goal in the bottom of the screen is what our goal ought to be, is to get to heaven and take as many people with us as we can. And if that's our goal, we're probably going to get there. Okay. And we're really studying, working at it. All right. And my liberty is not important. Jesus gave up his to come to save me, so I can sure do it to save my brother. Right? English readers frequently miss the critical point in this verse. The first word translated judge is krinomen. That's first person plural. The second word is krinate, second person plural. So he changes persons. Okay. We don't catch that if we're not careful, we miss it.
You and we.
Yeah. Any question there?
Oh, we all.
All right, verse 14. I think we can finish 14. We won't go any further after 14. All right? All right? Verse 14, if you would. Now, Jerry read last. Are we back to Chris?
James,
if you would.
Oida kai pepes my en curio Iesu, hotiuden koinon diautu, eme to logizomeno, ti koinon, enai, ekeno koinon. So I think he's expressing the idea here that I know, and furthermore, although the word furthermore is not there, am persuaded in Lord Jesus, or Jesus Lord, that nothing is unclean of itself, lest the one reckoning something to be unclean, that is unclean.
Okay. See, so ame to would be if not the one, see. So except, probably except. Okay. All right. Now wait a second here. I know oida is perfect tense, isn't it? And then persuaded, pepesta, is perfect tense. So I have known and still know, and I have been persuaded and I'm still persuaded. Okay? Hadn't changed my mind. All right.
Could in be in or by? Could it be
In
by?
the Lord, see.
It couldn't be by the Lord?
It could be by the Lord.
Oda is active.
That's
so
where it's supposed to
something-
come from. That's where the judgment's supposed to come
So
from.
this in, ain, could be by or in. Instrumental case or locative case. All right.
Since Oda is active and I am persuaded that Pesmai is passive,
Middle passive.
middle passive.
Yeah.
It shows that I think that he got this from the Word of God.
Well, I would agree with you.
He
on that.
studied it and it persuaded him.
Yeah.
His study persuaded
So
him.
it could be by the Lord. See, the Lord persuaded him through his word, Lord Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I think by the Lord is legitimate translation. Kurios is a benevolent Lord, of course. He's benevolent. And so he's going to be, if I just give up my liberty, he's going to bless me for it. Okay, don't be afraid of it. That nothing, not one thing, see, is what?
Unclean.
So under the New Testament, there are no such things as clean and unclean ceremonial. This is ceremonial uncleanness. So there's nothing that is ceremonially unclean in the New Testament
Of itself.
of itself. All right? All right?
I think he's
I understand fornication and stuff like that is unclean, but it was always been unclean. It's a sin.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's why I think the active, and when I brought up the active and passive, I think it's passive there. It's because he's making the distinction between the New and the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament, there were unclean
Right.
things.
And so there were things that were unclean at one time. Now then, this word is used in Mark 7, 18 and 19, and Acts 10, 12 through 15, 16, and so forth. We see it being used there. And that was ceremonially unclean.
Right.
Right? So now, save that, or if not, if not what? Well, it becomes unclean if he thinks it's unclean, see, and he doesn't. Does that make sense?
Right.
Because he's violated his conscience. But it's not inherently unclean in and of itself.
Right.
It's only that his conscience got violated. So if he counts anything to be unclean, it is unclean to him.
Right.
Now, I want you to, I think my slide here, it might not be, the word unclean, here's all the places it's found, on this slide here. And again, you can look that up yourselves, but ceremonial uncleanness is what it is. And the language of this verse shows that not only are food and drink that we eat no longer ceremonially unclean, but no thing is unclean, ceremonially unclean. So now he makes it generic. It's a generic statement. Then he's going to apply that principle in the following verses to eating and drinking and observing days. Right?
I think speaking to the Christian Jew there.
Well, it's very, very possible he's speaking to the Jewish Christians, yes. It's possible. But nothing is unclean in itself. Okay? So he's made a generic statement, broad sweeping statement. Now, I will deal with that next week, the Lord willing. I have some slides built into the text. You'll see them next week. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Did anyone have a question?
I wonder how they could have taken Peter's experience before going to Cornelius and come up with the idea that there was some kind of meat or something that was unclean.
Well, if you go back to Acts 15, he told them. Remember, we had those two passages in Acts 15, but you put them side by side, you can see what he's talking about. Eating things sacrificed to idols, you defile yourself. And this probably is the defiling he's talking about. They're talking about there in Acts 15. And we put them side by side when we looked at them.
There were obviously some Jewish Christians to me that were having a hard time with that.
Well, I can see that.
Yeah. All their life, all their family.
We need to be aware of that. You know, if we convert somebody out of the Baptist church, they still got some Baptist ideas in their head. We just got to just work it out of them gently and kindly and work them through it.
We call that they bring some baggage.
Yeah, they bring baggage.
Yeah.
They sure do. All right. Any questions? I'm anxious to go another 30 or 40 minutes, but we're going to call a halt to it tonight.
I've already closed my book.
All right. So, any questions, anybody, or comments? All right.